Oftentimes, some of the coolest suggestions come from attendees who may have picked something up from another conference, or maybe they have an idea for an accommodation you hadn't thought of before.
Welcome to the Marketing Magnified Podcast. I'm your host, Mary Jo from Stream Creative. This series is going to be about event marketing, and today I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing Melanie Deziel. So my first question for you is, a culture of creativity. How does that translate into a memorable event experience?
I think there's a couple ways that you can tie in a culture of creativity to your event, and it's going to depend on your role. I think for an events team, you want to make sure that your planning committee, your group, anyone who's contributing to that process certainly feels like they're in a culture of creativity where they can speak up, where they can suggest ideas. I think especially now in an environment where people are tighter than ever with their marketing dollars, you want to make sure that your event is distinctive, right? In a way that's going to earn that attendance, earn your event being the one that they submit for reimbursement or that they get their team to go to. So being able to open up the conversation and allow for more creative ideas to be brought up and embraced, I think is really important for standing out in the marketplace for sure.
Yeah, I know, totally agree. We want our event to be something that people look forward to every year, that, when they come, they have an experience that they go back and tell more people about. And then we do have a lot of repeat customers, which is awesome. Some people have been coming year after year, and we're in our 11th year. So I think I would say, feels into our culture that we have built a pretty cool conference that people follow and want to come to year after year.
Totally. And events, I think, inherently are a creative business, like many of the other things that we do. But it's really important that your attendees also feel that same level of that this is a creative environment. This is a place that's open to growth, to ideas, to suggestions. I'm sure you've had this experience too. Oftentimes, some of the coolest suggestions come from attendees who may have picked something up from another conference, or maybe they have an idea for an accommodation you hadn't thought of before. There's always, as long as there's that feeling of openness that we can all contribute and share ideas and feel like those ideas will be welcomed and accepted, I think the event is better for it. Your team is better for it. And then ultimately, the whole event experience is better for it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And you will get that when you come. You're going to find our attendees love to ask questions. They love to run ideas off of you. We also hear people are really friendly, approachable. Hey, I got this going on and you just talked about this. Maybe you can help me with this? So you'll see a lot of that when you come. So I think that comes across. So I think that's very important. Okay, so question number 2. The most impactful ways to create content. How can you do that before an event, during maybe an event, and then after? How does that content fill in those processes?
It's such a good question. I think a lot of the content we create, at least our instinct on the event side, is to think about promotional content, right? We want to advertise the amazing speakers, the wonderful agenda we've put together, all the amazing venues, which you guys just nail it on, right? So being able to advertise all of those things, your instinct is to create that kind of promotional content. I think it's also really important to create educational content throughout that whole life cycle, before, during, and after. There's a lot of questions that people have. And if you have an event like yours where people are really open and familiar and they're able to speak up and ask questions, it's wonderful. That's not always the case for an event. And it's not always the case for the culture where your attendees may be coming from, right? No matter how amazing our events are, they might be coming from a work environment that's more quiet, that may be from a culture where you don't necessarily speak up and ask those questions. And so being able to educate them proactively on everything from how to sign up for the event, how to register, where they're going to be going, where to park. If they do have questions or they do need help, where can they go? I think the more proactive you can be with educational content, the more engaged people will be, because you're going to answer questions that they may not even have known that they had. And I know for me, as an autistic person, I feel so welcome and so safe when I'm going to an event and I get that kind of content ahead of time. Because I guarantee I've already worried about where I'll be parking. I've already worried about who to go to if I have a question. And so having that stuff proactively given really helps people feel comfortable, feel safe, feel welcome. And that's what we're all about, right? We want people to feel that when they come and attend our events. So educational content can play a massive role in creating that feeling of community, but also in more deeply engaging the audience at every stage of that process.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. One of the things we are going to be doing this year is asking questions ahead of time. We're going to do a little survey, and it's going to be twofold because we want to take that feedback. We want to know what they want to learn about. We want to
Yeah,
ask them questions about themselves. And we're going to feed that to the speakers too, because I have to imagine if we provide you with some of that information ahead of time, you're going to know your audience a little bit better.
absolutely. Yeah. And obviously, a lot of my experience at events comes from being an attendee, but being a speaker as well. And it makes it so much easier to craft the content in a way or frame it in a way that's going to be most engaging and appealing. One of my favorite things to do, and some speakers, this is a nightmare, but for me, I love this. I love getting suggestions from the audience, whether that's
Mhm.
in advance or live on site, of the exact type of business they run or the exact type of content they create, so that I can on the fly say, so if you are our friend over here and you're applying it in this context, here's what that might look like. If you're our friend over here and you're facing this challenge, here's how you might approach it. It allows the content to be much more personalized to the audience and really to give a more applicable experience, a more tactical experience where they can walk away with actionable things they're able to take back to their team or put into practice right away. And the more context you have ahead of time, the easier that process will be.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. That's really important. That's one of the things we try and do here is really gauge the audience and then share that with you guys. So you can kind of then, with your sessions, what you were just saying, really feed in and kind of know your audience a little bit more. And it helps you better prepare. So I love that.
Yeah. Well, and as you're talking about content, like through the different life
Hmm.
stages, especially when you have people who are returning, coming from years past, some sort of communication or content that shows you took that feedback or advice from years prior and you're saying, hey,
Yeah.
thanks for all of you who shared your wonderful feedback from last year. Here's some new things we're going to be doing, or some new things we're trying, some new things we're implementing. It just kind of contributes to that same culture of feeling like they're part of the event, feeling like there's community, but also it shows how engaged you are, how
Yeah.
actively you're listening and how much you care about their experience. And it's just another touch point, another opportunity to reach out and engage before the event or between events.
Yeah. No, that's great. All right. So the event's over. Now, what kind of content can come from once the event is over?
Well, the good news when the conference is over is that hopefully you've captured all the content of the event itself and you can parse that into so many different pieces. One of the wonderful things that I love seeing after a conference ends or an event ends is trickling out little gems from throughout the event, right? Obviously, ahead of time, we don't want to give all the special sauce away. But once the event is done, that gives us an opportunity to share, quotable moments or great, I don't know, jokes that a speaker told, or the crazy overhead shot of the mingling and mixing hour, all those kind of things that make someone say, man, I really missed out and I'm excited to go next year. I think you've got so much to work with when the event ends because you've got all that to work with. But it also gives you a chance to do some of the stuff we've been talking about here, reaching out to ask for
Mhm.
feedback, inviting folks again for next year. There's so much you can do when it's done to keep that engagement going. And I would say the same is true for speakers too. Just as a consideration, we come to an event, we put our heart and soul into it. We meet your attendees, like we feel
Yeah.
like we're part of it. And a lot of times, since we're not in the event funnel, so to speak, we may not get those same updates about the recap or here's the recordings or any
Hmm.
of those other things. So just a friendly plug here, keep your speakers in the loop too, because
Yeah.
and I'm sure I know we've talked about this. Sometimes the best way to get speakers for your event is to get referrals from your past
Yeah.
speakers. So the more informed you are
Yeah.
as a speaker at an event, even when it's
Mhm.
over, you can help contribute and add value for years to come too.
Yeah, that's one thing here. As you know, you were my referral from Jay Akunzo.
Yeah,
So we definitely tap into that. Some of the speakers that we've had, I still keep in contact with. I sent a retirement gift to one, but I
I
think
love it.
the relationships that you build are so important at any event because
It
you never
really
know
is.
down the road if you could remember, oh, I met that person. I have their card. They talked about this. I can reach out to them. I think those relationships are really important as well. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And with speakers, for sure, obviously, that's the perspective I'm coming from. But I
Hmm.
think the same thing is true for attendees. One thing that's been nice for me is I have a few dietary requests when I'm coming to an event. And you always ask, usually ahead of time, what do you want for lunch or something like that? And when I've returned to an event and they've remembered that, it makes you feel so special. And they're like, oh, yes. And we remembered that, you don't drink alcohol, so we won't be
Mhm.
including that or something like that. It makes you feel seen. It makes you feel appreciated. And again, there's so many events that people could be attending, especially now that there are so many hybrid and virtual events as well. To go that extra mile and make someone feel important and remembered and not just a number really makes a huge difference in building relationships with your attendees and hopefully creating that loyalty for repeat attendance as well.
Yeah. One of the things I was going to ask you about is video content from speaking.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a lot of ways you can chunk that down, tear it
Yeah.
apart, mix it up. But, do you have any advice on, how we can do that from a presentation deck or from a speaker?
Yeah, so it's tough. I always think, at the end of an event,
Hmm.
um, attendees will often ask, "Can I get your slides?" Right?
Hmm.
And my instinct is often to say no because I think what happens is we download the slides and then we feel like that's all I check. I did it. I'm not actually going to
Hmm.
go and review. I'm not going to rewatch. Right? And so I often find that the best thing to do is actually to create some sort of recap or key
Hmm.
takeaways or our three top moments, something like that that does the reminding for them. Because I think
Yeah.
despite the best of intentions, as soon as we leave that event venue and we're back in our day to day, it's really hard to set aside a couple hours to rewatch talks or re-go through those decks, right? So I think the priority should be on how do we take what is a lot of content and kind of break that down into something that's more approachable when they're back in their
Hmm.
day to day life. And so key takeaways, top moments, um, things to remember. You can even roll those out down the line. If you have an event where someone makes reference to a particular holiday, a particular time of year, a certain tactic that is used a certain way, it's really smart to have those queued up so that the next time, I don't know, Facebook changes their algorithm again, you remember, yes, we have that great quote that said what you should do when there's an algorithm change. Let's grab that and share that with our audience. Hey, remember last year, our third speaker talked about this particular topic. Here's a reminder of how you can deal with the recent news about this particular thing, right? If you can atomize those bigger pieces of content into smaller bites, gives you an opportunity to find, newsworthiness or relevance at random points throughout the year to kind of re-engage with that content too.
Yeah. Great. Last question for you. As I said, today I was so excited coming in. We got your book, and we're going to be using them for Experience Inbound for our attendees.
Hooray.
Want to share a little secret what people can find in this book?
Yeah. So content fuel framework, this book is something I'm so proud of, which I think every author says, but this book, it really is so close to my heart. It's something that I created to help people put into action. Like my absolute priority with this book was to make it as tactical as possible. So it's very little fluff, which is something people tend to really enjoy. Nobody's got time for that, right? But it's a system you can use to create content on a consistent basis, which I think the more often there are new platforms popping up or just new job responsibilities, now we've all got to figure out AI, there's always something else popping up. It adds to our demands. And so having a reliable system you can use to come up with new content ideas can really make a big difference in the stress levels in your work, but also in the excitement and originality of your content. So if that's something that's useful and interesting for you, then Content Fuel Framework is hopefully going to be a resource that you can come back to time and again.
All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We'll see ya.
Sounds good. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.